new King Kong movie? Honestly, raise your hands. Honestly.
Right.
A bunch of people. Way weirder than you thought it was going to be, right? Thank you guys for coming out. I was psyched when this was happening, and I also have a very special, surprising guest for you. One of my favorite people on the planet, who is also in this, who is not scheduled to be here tonight, Jason Mitchell, aka Easy Motherfucking E. You guys are so close to us right now.
We have two mics tonight because we're not prepared.
That's fine.
So if you guys don't mind sharing, is that all right? Or
yeah, that's fine.
We'll share everything.
It's okay.
So first, before I want to make sure we're all set with Facebook. Are we all set filming?
Yeah.
So let me start by saying, first of all, huge thank you to both of you for being here tonight, and also a huge thank you to Warner Brothers and IMAX for letting us show the movie, for letting us use this theater. This movie looked amazing in IMAX, and if you have the opportunity to see it in IMAX 3D, I strongly recommend it. Because people are watching live who have not seen the movie, I just want to reiterate, trying to be spoiler-free about certain specifics. But let's get started. I'm going to start with you and say, how did this thing get off the ground? Because you started with this, I don't think there were people clamoring for another King Kong movie. So how did this thing get off the ground and get everyone excited to make it?
Honestly, there are times where I'm like, how does this movie even exist? This has been like 2.5 years of my life. We've been in the jungle together. We were joking, like, let's go make our apocalypse now. Let's like lose our minds in the jungle, and then we're like in swamps and in the jungle, like, oh my God, get us out of here. And by the way, what you said before I answered the question about IMAX is totally true, where this is such a crazy process, and you spend so much of your life on this, and it's so easy to lose sight of things. And literally, I sat in the same seat that you guys are sitting in now to watch our IMAX print, and it's one of those moments where you're like, oh my God, we made a big movie. Like, this movie belongs on a big screen, and it suddenly makes all that crazy process worthwhile. So if you guys go and see it again, please see it in IMAX 3D. It's my preferred version of it. I think it's beautiful. But this movie exists because they came to me and said, what do you think about making a new King Kong movie? And I said, awesome, I love King Kong, but also why? Like, why do we need to tell the story? Why do we need to do this again? Why are people asking for a new King Kong movie? So I went away over the weekend and thought about, is there a version of this movie that I would want to make? And I just started thinking, like, choppers and napalm and Hendrix popped in my brain, and then this idea of, like, Apocalypse Now and King Kong and, like, a Vietnam War movie with, like, a Harryhausen creature feature. And I was like, oh, I would make that movie. And I was like, I feel like I would want to watch the movie. My friends would want to see that movie. And as a testament to Warner Brothers and Legendary as being cool companies, I thought they were going to laugh me out of the room when that happened. Or when I went and pitched it, and instead they said, okay, let's make that movie. And so here we are. I honestly didn't expect this to be a thing.
Jason, let's talk a little bit about Straight Outta Compton real quick, and how many meetings did you have after that movie and playing Easy?
Not as many as you may think, to be honest. It's still actually very much of a struggle, because all actors and all people in this business, they have to continue to show up. You're only as good as that last job. So it gave me a lot more buzz, and people wanted to meet me, and they were excited. But it was a thing that I had to wait on, So I was fairly smart about the way I went about it, And he's laughing right now because he knows what I'm about to say. But in pre-production, Compton was just getting big, which means it just came out right before we did it. So you know what I used as my audition piece, right? I called Jordan Boy Roberts and I'm like, yo, would you like to come to the premiere Straight Outta Compton?
I got suckered into it.
Maybe to make sure, you see my best audition that you can see. So Straight Outta Compton ended up being my audition piece for Kong Skull Island. And on premiere night, he walks up to me and he goes, you ready to go to Skull Island? And I'm like, yes! So it was really unfolding very proper, but it was like really, really big shoes to fill, So I'm glad that I had somebody who was just as passionate as about it that I was, and, just really eager to work with me.
So basically the secret to getting acting gigs is inviting directors to premieres.
Hey, unless the movie sucks.
Yeah. It's inviting them to your premiere where you happen to be a breakout in an incredible movie. There's like a lot of steps in that, actually. Right.
Uh,
And also, you guys haven't even seen, like, this fool's got, like, this movie called Mudbound coming out that just premiered at Sundance. Like, you know, it's easy to have a role like he had and have that define you. You know, and have that be your thing where, like, that's like what you're going to be known as forever. And already, like, in the course of a year between this and, like, 2 other things that he has coming out, like, you're going to watch him and, like, instantly... Like, I feel comfortable saying he's like broken free of the shackles.
We should also point out real quick that, and people might not realize because you haven't seen a trailer yet, but you're in. I want to make sure that's on. You're in the new Catherine Bigelow movie.
Yeah, I am. Like, I can't really say too much about it, you know, because the big cat, she likes to keep everything on wraps. But I can say, you know, it's a powerful group of people telling a very powerful story, and like everything else, you know, I go in, I give it my all every time, you know. So hopefully they like it.
Let's talk. Jumping into the rest, you put together this crazy cast. It's very hard to get. Well, just talk about how you put this thing together, and was it easy? Was it hard? What's it like putting something like this together?
Filmmaking is never easy, ever. And this in particular because we pitched that crazy idea, which meant we sort of had to throw out the original draft they had. Because it was a wildly different idea, so it was this crazy process where very frequently, like, the concept art was leading the story, and like, we were just, it literally was just like the dork in me being like, what do I want to see in a King Kong movie? What do I want to see, like, in, like, my monster movie? It's like, oh, I want to see a 50 caliber on a Triceratops skull. I want to see a guy in a gas mask slicing birds with a katana. Right. You know, we would just get this imagery back that was super compelling. Like, the very first years, won't be able to really see this, but, like, on my phone, my screensaver is like it's King Kong, like, silhouetted by the sun, and this is the very first piece of concept art that was ever generated, because that was like the first image that popped in my brain. And so we were just like generating all of this content, all of this material, just trying to constantly, like, how do we make this feel fresh? How do we make it feel different? And then the script sort of had to catch up to that. But then with the actors, it was just going to them and saying, look, this movie is just as much to me about, like, the moments where, like, a monkey's punching a helicopter out of the sky as it is, like, being able to linger on your face. You know, and, like, have these, like, to me, like, I wanted to make, like, if it's like a funhouse mirror version of Apocalypse Now, I also wanted it to be like this funhouse mirror version, very slightly, of, like, The Thin Red Line. Like, to me, like, that's such an incredible war movie. And I also, like, you know, have you guys ever seen Kings of Summer, my last movie? Yeah. Woo! So, you know, it's like, no one saw it, don't worry about it. To me, like, the idea with that movie was like, can you make a dumb Terrence Malick movie? Can you make, like, something that's, like, ethereal and beautiful and lyrical, but then, like, Nick Offerman telling dick jokes? And so I wanted this to have a part of it, so just going to them and saying, like, look, I want to improvise, I want to find these moments, like, the stuff with him and Shay, like, that's just, like, raw chemistry. You know, most of John C. Reilly stuff, like, a lot of that is improvised. A lot of that's just us, like, fucking around on set, like, stab you by the end of the night, fucking ants, like, all that shit. It's all improvised. None of that was in the script. And that's just finding moments. So it was trying to just recruit these people. A, we're doing something totally different with this. B, I want it to be just as much, like, about the moments where we're just lingering on your face. And C, like, let's find these moments. Because I think so many of these big movies, like, they just feel canned and they feel like they're created in a lab, and so we just wanted to have something that had that life and that camaraderie.
For both of you, I really love Larry Font, the cinematographer. And so for both of you, talk a little bit about how you got to work with him. What was it like working with him for you?
Larry's a master. Larry's a genius. He does some of the best stuff out there, and you know, this was not an easy movie to shoot just because we shot most of it practically. We went to Vietnam, which is a place that nobody's ever shot a movie like this. You know, I had these guys, like, up to their waist in water for days at a time, and they killed it, and the camera crew killed it, and we went out there and we just, like, I think most movies look the same. You go to these blockbusters and they're all like TV, and that's such a bummer to me. Like, go back and watch a Tony Scott movie. Like, oh, like, that's what a movie looks like. You know what I mean? Like people don't make things that, like, look cinematic anymore. It's all, like, gloss and it's all sheen, and Larry's one of those guys that just, like, shoots stuff beautifully like that. And so Larry and I just pushed each other really hard, where, like, I grew up on anime and video games and shit, so for me, like, I want everything to be a keyframe. I want to be able to pause it and you have that moment where you're like, oh, that's Kong punching a helicopter, that's him in a gas mask slicing this bird. Like, these just, like, iconic images and frames. and like actually have move a camera in a way that's meaningful. And luckily, Larry sort of bought into that. So I was fortunate enough to work with him because he's a genius.
Larry's the kind of guy I can honestly say who isn't like looking for anything special, you know, from anybody else, because he's very confident on the inside about what he can do, you know. And it was a blessing really to sit back and be able to watch him, because Jordan is a guy who's so good at like working with actors and thinking visually, you know, and is also very like dynamic in the way he moves on set, even. You know what I mean? You see him always kind of in a trot, and Larry brings a very, you know, slow, well, not slower pace to things, but he just has a lot of grace with what he does. Like in between takes, he shows us like magic tricks and stuff like that, you know. And he's a magician at what he does, and he's just a beast. You know what I mean? And all around, like, all about making it happen. You know what I mean? Like, so many times Jordan will come to him and be like, well, I'm trying to do this, and that. And he'll be like, all right, I think we can do it. Give me 25 minutes to light it, man. We got it, you know? And he takes it off, you know? So I'm glad that I got to be in the presence of such a fearless leader, you know what I mean? And then somebody who's behind the scenes and only wants to make it beautiful, you know?
I really enjoyed the visuals of this movie and the way the camera moves, the slow motion, the orange sky. Like, there's just a lot of cool stuff going on. Was this always the intention when you started out, or was it some of this finding it in the moment?
It's a mixture of both. I ascribe to the philosophy where, like, you can plan something out as much as you want. You can have the best storyboards and the best everyone, but until you're on set that day with these guys in their wardrobe with the camera up, like, you can't. There's always a way to make it more real. And whether it's like, you know, these guys, like, the reason that I went to a lot of them, and the reason that I knew that they were my people was me saying, I don't want you going back to your trailers. I don't want you doing this. Like, I want you hanging around set, because if something happens where the lights break into the trees, like, there's shots in this movie that's like, we were like waiting for a setup, and like literally the light's doing something, and Jay's just standing there. I'm like, grab the camera, and you just shoot it, you know? And so a lot of it is finding that like authenticity. But yeah, like, I always wanted this movie. If I'm gonna get my shot of making like a giant blockbuster, like, I want it to be beautiful, and I want it to be like remind people like things can be cinematic. And like, to me, the gold standard always, and I don't think kids probably do this anymore because it's probably all digital. But like when I was a kid, like, you had your binder at school, right? And kids like used to print shit out, put it under like the plastic paper, like whatever their shit was, you know, whether it was like a CD cover or whatever. Like, they would print it out and it was there, and like, or like put it inside their locker. That was like you know, when you're in a dorm room, you just print out, like, that stuff reflects you. Like, you're like, this is me. Whether it's a Pulp Fiction poster or whatever, that's just like who you were. And so I just wanted to make a movie that like had a bunch of frames like that. You're like, unequivocally, that's from Kong, because that was another big part of like, well, if people are gonna go to this movie, like, it has to have all this stuff that you just haven't seen before. So it was so much work sort of pushing it this way, and like, luckily, like, you know, this is a pretty crazy color grade for a movie like this. You know, like, everything's kind of like desatted these days, and like pretty evenly lit, and like, you know, I gotta give props to my studio for letting me like do some pretty crazy stuff with this. But yeah, that was always the intent, to like have it be like beautiful and striking, and just feel like, if you're playing with Apocalypse Now, if you're playing with the imagery of those movies, like, you gotta step up, you know. So
I don't want to spoil anything because people are watching this live, but there's a reason to stay in the seats to the end of the credits. Maybe there's something there. Was it always the intention to put something there from the very beginning, and how did that sort of come together without revealing what it is?
yeah, I think we always knew that there was gonna be something, but what that something was changed a billion times. There was a completely different scene there once. We actually shot this during principal photography, and then it's funny, it dropped off the movie for a long time, and it's one of those things where it wasn't on the film forever, and then like one person very close, like 3 weeks before the end, they're like, hey, what about that end credits thing? What about whatever happened to that thing? Meanwhile, for like months, I've been like, let's put that back on. And then so everyone rewatched it, like, oh yeah, this is good. And you just kind of sit there and be like, yeah, it's really good, guys. And then they put it back on, and like now, like people seem to like. Did you guys like that scene? Does that get you excited?
Yeah.
So yeah, people have spoken. But yeah, we always knew there was gonna be something, but it went through so many different variations, and there was a version of it where you saw a creature, they were in a completely different situation. There was a bunch of stuff. But.
I always like asking this of directors. What did you learn from friends and family screenings, test screenings that impacted the finished film?
I mean, you learn everything. At a certain point in my director's cut, I like with for those of you who had seen Kings of Summer is a very difficult tone. It's a very tricky tone. This movie as well is a very complicated tone where I believe life's a spectrum, so you can make stuff that's like super intense and takes itself seriously, then the movie will take the piss out of itself, or like be really absurd or goofy or almost slapstick at times. But hopefully, like, you know, John C is so good, and like him and Shay are so good that those like more outwardly funny moments actually like ground it. You know what I mean? They hopefully give it more pathos and make you care about these people more, even though it's like essentially this absurd thing. So at a certain point in my director's cut, probably about 5 weeks in before the movie's like fully ready, every single week I test it. I show it to like my closest friends, you know, like just and fellow filmmakers, you know, like David Lowery and Ryan Coogler, and I just bring in guys like that. And I'm a dick, you know what I mean? Like I'm a dick to my friends about their work, and I'm super honest with them because you have to be, but also I need them to be honest with me. Like it does me no good for my friend to come in and be like, "Oh, you did such a good job." You know, it's like you, great, you just fuck me over. And so you learn a lot, but honestly, the thing that I would say I learned most, that was the most satisfying, was just the realization that, because like with a character like John C. Reilly and with some of the more comedic stuff that they have, you don't know if that's gonna land. You don't know if an audience is gonna fully be willing to go with this like monster movie, this like Vietnam movie, and then be able to have this absurd stuff going on. And that, like, seeing them react to that, seeing the way in which they reacted to that, seeing the way in which that sort of made the movie go from here to here, just like, you know, for me, that's just validation in general. Not about this movie, but just the idea that, like, people can handle complicated tones, because American movies want to, like, be one thing. It's just a comedy. It's just a drama. It's just a superhero movie. Where it's like you watch South Korean films, you watch, like, movies from the 70s, like, the tone's all over the place.
Let's talk a little bit about memorable moments from filming. Is there a day or two you're going to remember forever?
Yeah. Ooh, I thought you was going to ask for a handful. To be honest, more than anything, like, I would have to say Vietnam is hands down probably the most beautiful place I've ever seen with two eyes. Definitely. And we had the pleasure of shooting in Ha Long Bay, which is, it means sleeping dragon, but it's a bunch of like limestone mountains like shooting up out of the water. And it was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. It took us like maybe 45 minutes on a boat to get to set. And the set was on a boat, and we had a boat strapped to that boat, and then we still had to go further out. Like we saw schools of jellyfish and random monkeys and just, you know, mountain goats and things that you never thought you would see with your own eyes. You know what I mean? And it was just, it was breathtaking, you know. And it was breathtaking to see how Vietnam as a country let all of that go, and were very happy to see us and embrace us, and, you know, just really have an organic moment in one of the most pure and organic places on earth. You know what I mean? It was like, it was dope. I really think I'm doing a really poor job of putting it in words. You know what I mean? Like, it was special, and yeah, I'll never forget it for sure.
But also one of the things that I'm most proud of, like when you asked that question about like memorable moments, is I honestly actually believe that this movie is what it is because of the bond that Jay and a bunch of the actors formed, and the bond that we formed, and the like Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness descent that we sort of went through, right, as we're all kind of taking on something like this before. Like, really the only actors who'd really kind of been through stuff like this before were Tom and Sam, and then there was crew who had done movies like this, but right, most of the actors and myself, we had never done movies like this. So we kind of went on our own journey, and I really think that like most of the really good things in this movie are based around trust, and based around like the trust that they had for each other and for me, and that's a lot of the stuff that I love most in this film.
Your last movie cost about $1.50 and a roll of duct tape, and this movie cost, I'm going to say, over $100 million.
Correct.
Right. So what was it? What were you thinking before the movie started in terms of what am I getting myself into, and what was the actual filming process like? Like, if you could give yourself advice going back in time, is there anything you wish you'd known, or was it sort of like what you expected?
Filmmaking's filmmaking to some degree, you know, you can ride a bike, therefore you can ride a motorcycle. That doesn't mean you're not going to crash your motorcycle into a wall and break your back. You know, but the fundamentals of like telling a story and setting up your shot and all that are the same. And there are times where you're like, man, this would have actually been a lot easier if I had $1.50 and a roll of duct tape. And then there are times where you're flying helicopters around and setting off explosions. Where you're like, well, we could have never done this. And so it's a give and a take, right? You gain some, you lose some. And there are things that you could prepare yourself for and things that you never could have prepared yourself for. I think that part of it is this like Zen element that you have to take on, where you are dealing with a lot of money, and therefore you're dealing with a lot of people, and they're incredible people and very smart people. But there are times when you have disagreements or people want to go different ways on something. And one of the things you have to learn is like, when you make an indie, if someone brings up a bad idea, like your job is to be like, no! No, like your job's to protect it. Like you have to protect the core of it, right? Like you have to shield what this thing you love from everyone. And on something like this, you just kind of have to learn at times, like, the really bad ideas will generally kill themselves. So instead of going after that idea, instead of using your energy and your, like, cachet, you're like, I'm going to kill this idea, like, focus on something else that actually matters. Because generally the bad idea, as terrifying as it is to you in your heart and your soul and, like, your filmmaker brain, where you're like, oh, this can't be in the movie. No way. I'm going to freak out if this isn't in the movie. They kill themselves. Like eventually, bad ideas hopefully reveal themselves to everyone, and then people sort of collectively get past them, and people put their heads together, and then you're sort of a team working for you. Because everyone has bad ideas. The best filmmakers have bad ideas. Like watch transcripts of some of the most famous filmmakers of all time talk about their movies in like writing rooms, and the amount of like bad ideas that come out before a good one are endless. But yeah, there's so many things you could never prepare yourself for. The endurance of just like 2.5 years of your life is really crazy, and being away from your home and the people you love and all of that. Like there's so many insane things to it.
Again, I don't want to spoil any of the big twists or turns or what's really in the movie, but there are other monsters, if you will, in this film. I'm curious, were there other monsters that didn't make the cut? And the ones that are in the film, how drastically maybe did they get altered? Or was it always like, there's a certain, you know what I mean? I'm trying to say things without ruining.
No, when I started, there was no, the other script basically had dinosaurs in it, some weird like dinosaur, like mutant type things. And my first thing was like, Peter's movie did that really, really well. Jurassic World had just come out. So why am I going to put dinosaurs, like, that's just one other reason of why am I going to give you guys dinosaurs in a King Kong movie. And also, like, as a kaiju fan, as a monster movie fan, as a Harryhausen fan, as, like, a, like old sort of, like, B-movie fan, this is my opportunity to, like, make my monsters. You know what I mean? To, like, have my designs and my things out there. And so I love the idea of throwing out monsters. And then it became throwing out dinosaurs, and then it became a really difficult thing to find the vibe of them, and then slowly through like Miyazaki and like anime and video games, that's where we sort of found this like inspiration of them sort of being like spiritual and mythical, and being like beautiful and terrifying at the same time. So there was thousands of designs. There were so many things, and we would just show them to people, and it was like, have you seen this before? Do you feel like you've seen this monster before? And if they're like, yeah, it reminds me of, and then gone forever, never coming back, And so we just, because the whole thing with this movie is like, it would be a failure if we showed you monsters you had seen before. It'd be a failure if you'd seen a version of Kong you had seen before. It'd be a failure if we showed you the Beauty and the Beast story again. It'd be a failure if we like took you back to the Empire State Building. Like, we worked so hard to try and just show you, like, when I was a kid, the thing that made me want to be a filmmaker was I saw things that I'd never seen before. I don't feel like movies these days show you things you haven't seen before in the same way, and that bums me the fuck out, like, really intensely. And it's such a strange.
I'm wondering the same thing.
It's such a strange landscape out there, and so like.
You have to use that for the recording.
For the recording, I don't think it works.
Is it working?
It's not really working. Hello.
Try this one. You got to talk right into the mic.
Well, that was the end of my answer, but.
Does this? Oh, it doesn't. You just have to talk right into it.
Oh, well, not switch now, because we'll jinx it.
So you did the junket like 2 weeks ago. What was it? Now, when did you know that when you talked about Metal Gear, it would get all out there? Or were you sort of like a little surprised a few days later when like, oh shit, there's a lot of Metal Gear stories coming. Oh, people who don't realize he's also maybe working on Metal Gear Solid.
Woo! I wasn't surprised because Metal Gear Solid is the fucking shit. But I was actually surprised at how frequently it got asked. I think that just goes to show, yeah, sure, maybe there's like a cynical element of that is people just wanting to get a headline and then they'll get a headline, but I actually take that legitimately as people's love of Kojima's work and the way in which that series has ingrained itself into people's brains and the way in which it has affected people and the way, like, to me, that is not just like one of the best video games of all time, it's one of my favorite pieces of media of all time. And so it was actually amazing, like, hearing people like ask questions. One of the things that I'm actually really proud of in this movie is I feel like the tone of this film to some degree is very like Metal Gear, where it's like super serious and super weird and like kind of dark, and then like, you know, like it doesn't break the fourth wall, but like, yeah, I mean, I was psyched that people were asking that question, just because like, if I'm gonna do that movie, we need to like pay honor to not only what that game elicits from you, like the feeling it gives you, but also like the characters that Kojima has created and the ideologies that they represent and the like walking, talking philosophies that they are.
Have you been like, I play Metal Gear? Let's talk.
Snake?
Snake?
Snake! No, everybody know Metal Gear, man. That's the truth. That's the truth. But, you know, is it going for me to say? No, I was going to say.
No, it works. Just talk
to the black guy. No, but I was definitely, you know, like, amazed with how much Jordan really lives that. You know what I mean? He's a video game nerd. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he's one of my best friends in the world. But, you know, that's his life. And when it's passionate to you, you should do it right. You know what I mean? So it should be hands down like a job that he should get, first of all, and something that I know he would rock. You know what I mean? Because he loves it. He loves it like he loves himself.
It's something that's very popular around the world. Has a cool title.
Definitely.
It's just about, you know, hopefully it can get brought to the screen.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely want to open it up to the audience for a few questions. If anyone, I'm going to go with the back row right there.
So during pre-production on this movie, how did you decide on how big to actually make Kong, especially considering that people have already started talking about that he may share a universe with a monster the size of a skyscraper?
So before you go, because they can't hear, how did you decide on the size of Kong? Because also he might be sharing a universe with another creature.
It's funny because most people's cynical reaction is, oh, Kong's only this big in the movie because he needs to fight Godzilla down the road. And before the King Kong versus Godzilla movie was even announced, one of the first things I wanted to do on the movie was I was like, I want to rewind time. Kong fundamentally to me is not, and will never be, an anatomically correct gorilla. He is not just a silverback gorilla. That's not what he is. He is a capital M movie monster. He's a biped. He walks on 2 feet. And so I wanted to take him back to being a biped and a classic movie monster, but then I wanted to stand him up even taller, even like with more power. I wanted to give him a nobility. Like that's why to me, like this is like God Kong, right? Like he's got like a thankless task of having to protect this island. He's like a lonely warrior, and I wanted that like Shadow of the Colossus, like melancholy nature to him, you know, where he walks around and he carries himself with like pride. But like it's like, what are you gonna do with your day? You know, it's like, you don't have shit to do with your day, Kong. Just walk around fighting monsters, and that's so sad. So I wanted to like turn him into that god and give him that like that posture. But a big part of that was just fundamentally saying like, if you and I sit here right now, and you were to see that thing, how big does it have to be where the first synapse in your brain, when it fires, it doesn't think that's a big monkey, that's an ape that's got gigantism, but it thinks to itself, literally, not the third response, not the seventh response, the very first thing that goes through your brain when you look at it, that's a god. I'm looking at a god. And what does that do to you? Does it make you the atheist, that make you the believer, that make you the agnostic? How does that split people? Like, how does it split people on the island when they see him? And so that's why Kong's so big. So I wanted him to tower over people. And I wanted him to loom over this island and have a presence where you felt him as a god.
Right there.
Hey guys, I love the movie. Loved it a lot. Like you said, originality. These are the kind of movies that got me into being a film editor. It's just fantastic. Since we're talking about that shared universe, with Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, they had shot the movie. They had already animated Godzilla, and then they went back and hired Andy Serkis to do some of the mocap on his face, give him personality, give him a soul of character. You guys did that with Terry Notary, and you also brought Toby Kebbell to go back and do the same thing. So what is it? How did you guys come up with the idea to do that? Because you want to make Kong a character, right? So like, where'd you get Toby, like from Koba and stuff like that?
Well, real quick, talk about the motion capture on Kong, and Toby and Terry, who both worked on it.
Well, you're forgetting a third and very important element of that, which is you can't mention the performance of Kong without leaning very heavily on the actual keyframe animation that the animators at ILM did,
Right.
who are geniuses and designed my childhood. And yes, Terry came in initially and really worked with me on like what that walk is, because like it's so easy to like want to make Kong do the simian thing, right? But like getting him to do that kind of like more godlike thing, but still have those ape-like qualities. Terry came in, we worked for days and days to kind of like try and get that walk cycle down. Then he came back and did a bunch of mocap stuff and like body, just like movements and you know range of motion things. But then the ILM guys really took that, and there's a lot of stuff that's just pure ILM. Then Toby came in and did a lot of facial cap work, just like laying down groundwork, and Toby killed it. Like he crushed it, and so much of Kong really is his eyes and really is what he's doing. But then there was a lot of stuff too where, you know, Kong, the way he moves, the thing that's really complicated with this, is the way Kong moves has more to do with like Evangelion or an anime or a manga than the way a big monkey would move like that. It's a much more stylized, like hyperkinetic thing, and you just legitimately can't capture that with people. Right. You know, that's why anime is what it is.
Right.
And so it really was this fusion of Terry coming in initially, really laying down like this incredible groundwork, Toby coming in, doing his thing, and then really letting ILM go off to the races and really sort of do their thing with it.
Right.
I was curious this whole time what each of them did on the movie, because I saw both of their credits, both of their names in the credits, and I'm like, wait, what? I was a little, but that explains it. Next question, right here in the front.
Real quick, that movie was amazing. Can't have a Kong movie without him in chains and him holding a white woman, so good job on that. But there was a few shots that, you know, the camera's like right behind the gun. Was that inspired by your love of video games? Because it's very first-person shooter kind of.
Dude, one of those shots like straight up like R3 clicks in. So yeah. Yeah, one of those shots straight up snap zooms. It's funny because
The question was, was there a video game influence, and also props on Kong and Chains and Kong holding a white woman?
The chain stuff I'm really proud of because it really was like, how do we give you sort of some of the classic imagery of Kong? How do we pay honor to the legacy of it, but then do new shit with it? How do we put him in chains? How do we like sort of suffocate him as if it's gas, but in a new way where he's that big? How do we tap into all these sort of iconic Kong things, but completely like engineered it in a different way? And so like the chain stuff, that was like, well, how do we make this battle crazy? What if he's trapped in? What if he uses a propeller like a throwing star? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? But yeah, look, I'm a dork. Like my brain was rewired by video games at a really young age, and like I want to be a part of a group of filmmakers who, when people mention the word video games and movies together, and not even just video game movies, but video game influence, because like the difference between an active and a passive experience is such a big deal. And when movies are bad and just action happening around you, you're commenting on the passive experience of watching what would be fun if it was an active experience, if you were playing Uncharted or something. When it's just happening around these characters you don't care about, you're like, and then video games are a bad thing as far as a movie goes. I want to be a part of a wave of guys that like, when people say the word video game and movie together, and not even just a video game movie, but video game influence, they're like, oh yeah, it's cool. It's like you play like Journey, Shadow of the Colossus. Like you play these games now that are like art important. And so yeah, those first person things are like absolutely first person inspired.
You're trapped in an island. What's the video game console that you keep with you? You can have all the games.
Oh, shit.
You seem to be a gamer. I'm curious.
I would either take a Dreamcast, because there's super weird Dreamcast games out there, and you would endlessly just go like, what? Who made this game? There's just so many weird games on that system. Or or honestly, probably like a Super Nintendo.
You know, I'm gonna start off with Super Nintendo because it got the illest games ever. It really definitely does. Either that or I'm gonna be bougie, man, and go with the PlayStation 4. You know, you never know what you might gotta watch or download or, you know. Yeah. Let's make sure we get it all. Yeah, that's my two.
Let's do the next question right there.
Is the inscription on Marlowe's jacket a Steve Brule reference?
I can't. Can you repeat the question? Is the inscription on the jacket?
Is the inscription on the jacket a Steve Brule reference, which is a show that John C. Reilly has on Adult Swim. Ironically, we now live in a world where the amount of times I've been asked is it a Steve Brule reference is infinite. Have you seen Akira? How many of you have seen Akira? Raise their hands. Half the audience, that's a problem, guys. That's a straight up problem. That's a masterpiece. Watch Akira tomorrow and then go see Kong again on Friday. Akira is a masterpiece of manga and anime. And he wears like this incredible jacket in it. It says good for your health, bad for education. And so I wanted to say good for your health as a reference to Akira. And then when I sent it to John, he was like, you know, for your health is my slogan on Steve Brule. And he was like, people are gonna think this is weird. And I was like, no, this is great. Total double whammy. And it's amazing because like the amount that I get that question as opposed to is that from Akira is like infinite.
Next, I want to ask people who have not.
Right
Over there.
So I guess it seems like you're a fan of Asian media and stuff. I was wondering that one scene where we introduced to Kong Island sushi.
Old boy?
Oh, yes. And then what other insane like obscure references were there from like
Other references to Asian cinema or just movies in general?
Well, he was asking if Kong eating the squid is a reference to Old Boy, and it absolutely is. And literally, I had Toby doing. I was playing back Odesu eating the squid while Toby had licorice in his mouth, trying to eat it. And the ILM animators, I also sent them that clip, and they went with it. And I showed that Park Chan-wook watched the movie recently, and I sat down with him in Seoul, and the whole time I was just like, "Why are you talking to me? Like, you have no business talking to you. You're a master of cinema." And he loved that. And he thought it was so amazing that there was a super expensive Kong shot of it's just like a reference to Old Boy.
I have to ask you, you didn't see his new film, did you?
I love his new film. I watched his new film in a foreign language where there's no subtitles because that's how much I love his film.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but
No, I'm talking about OSHA.
Oh no, nerd foul, dude.
Oh, wait a minute, I fucked up. No, I'll move past that. Let's
Don't
pretend
confuse-
I didn't say
don't
that.
confuse Park
Yeah,
Chan-wook
no,
and Bong
I
Joon-ho.
just messed up. I'm gonna turn right
It's on the
side.
internet forever. Busted.
Right,
You just got G-checked.
Every once in a while, you mess up, and that's what happens.
I haven't seen it, but the host Bong Joon-ho's movies also was a huge influence to me. In general, South Korean films I think are the best movies out there right now and the best working directors out there because they play with tone. And if you look at I Saw the Devil or The Good, the Bad, and the Weird or Memories of a Murder or any of those films, you know, Old Boy, JSA, Handmaiden, whatever, like they're amazing at taking Western conventions and then, much like Hideo Kojima, taking Western conventions and then twisting them and spitting them back out. Like, it's like, yeah, how many, like, do you need to see a new Western again? No, but then you watch The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, and you're like, oh my God, this is the closest thing to Indiana Jones I've seen since Indiana Jones. And so the references, there's a huge, like, Asian influence in general in my life and in my drinking habits. But the references in this movie are everything from actual Mononoke references, not just influence, like the triangles in John C. Reilly's Katana are the triangles from Purple Lady in Mononoke, and there's a Taxi Driver reference, there's an Old Boy reference, there's a Zelda reference, there's a Metal Gear reference, there's an Alien, there's and not just like influence, like actual like, oh, this clearly is this thing. So there's a like laundry list of like nerdy shit hidden in this movie.
Have you done the commentary on the Blu-ray?
I have, and I tried to talk about the references, but then you end up like just getting caught up in dumb shit. Actually, like I did the commentary yesterday, and my brain is just such mush from traveling that I was like, this is gonna be the worst commentary of all time. Get ready for that one.
Next
Real stinker.
I'm gonna say it'll probably be okay.
Might be okay.
Right. Next question, right there.
Warner Brothers seems really adamant about doing some sort of film adaptation of Akira. And I was wondering if that's a project you'd be very interested in, and also how would you go about handling the casting issue in terms of ethnicity?
If you were offered Akira, would you take it, and how would you deal with the casting?
How do you know I haven't been offered Akira? I think that there is a good version of that movie. I think, unfortunately, Akira is one of those properties that has been borrowed from and stolen from. I mean, I actually think Josh Trank has been like very unnecessarily and unfairly tarred and feathered. Because I think he's a great director, but like Chronicle like is Akira. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of Akira references and inspiration built into a lot of stuff these days. I think there's a way to make a great movie. I would entertain the idea. But that's something where like you got to be super hard on it and yourself, because there's no reason to make the bad version of that movie. And the casting thing that's something that I just until I'm not doing that movie right now, so I don't even want to open that can of worms. But it's tricky and sensitive.
Do you think that can be done for PG-13, or would it have to be R?
Why are we talking so much about Akira?
We're on a tangent.
I think anything can be done anyway. I think there's absolutely. I mean, look, you can get away with a lot in a PG-13 movie. I'm surprised we got away with this. And
So it came back.
Yeah, it came back. I brought it back then. I think that certainly you could probably make a good PG-13 version of that. I don't know how you do the R-rated version of that for the budget it needs to be done at. And the real question is whether you are trying to adapt the anime or whether you're going back to the manga. That's the bigger question. Because why try and readapt the anime itself? That's already a masterpiece. So why would you bother trying to unless you are legitimately going to do a 300 thing where you're just like shot for shot bringing it into existence, and so you just have your live action version. Like why go down that road? The manga has so many. It's actually like a very different story, and there's so many other elements to that. So the question is like how you go back to that, but mine the right version of it.
It had to be a film series.
Or you could do it as like a film series, or TV is the shit these days. Do it as an HBO show, Netflix.
Right over there.
So I've seen this movie twice now. And
Hey, how you seen it twice? It's not even out yet.
That is impressive.
Did you bootleg this movie?
Screening. And then I'm going tomorrow to the premiere.
Hey, okay.
I love the character chemistry, but with the whole Godzilla.
Are you gonna actually pay for it? You see it 3 times for free? You better pay for a movie once, or pay for somebody to go to it.
No, it's gotta be too. Pay for it. But we've seen I love the character chemistry, and with the whole Godzilla timeline and the Kong timeline, is there a possibility of seeing that cast again?
Cast, God.
The King Kong cast?
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a possibility of seeing the King Kong cast again in a possible future thing?
Who doesn't want to see this guy on screen again in King Kong? That stuff's a little bit above my pay grade. It's an embarrassment of riches to be able to have the people that survived and the other actors that are a part of this and be able to take them to something. Honestly, you know what it probably depends on is whether you guys go and see this movie, whether people see this movie this weekend. To me, I keep joking the movie that I'm actually more interested in. And sadly, unless you show up as a little baby, you can't be a part of this. But I would make, and I don't like prequels, but I would make the young John C. Reilly on the island fighting monsters with a katana, befriending the Japanese pilot and living with the villagers. And just some weird $30 million screwball comedy with monsters. That's the movie I would make. But where it goes from there, that's so above my pay grade, and I think that that depends on how people react to this and whether people get out and see it. But I think it would be, I'd watch a whole movie just with him fighting monsters.
Yeah.
Shit, guys.
Like, Glenn Nelson goes
Cut
back
the
to-
shit.
Yeah, Glenn Nelson goes back to the hood and the monsters show up.
Right over there.
You mentioned about Jason inviting you to the preview of Compton, and that was like a great audition tape. And you talked about how you came in with your ideas, but you know, you're a young filmmaker and you're in charge of this massive project. What got you in the door? What do you feel like was your way to open that door for so many other young filmmakers out there who are looking for their dreams and looking to kick down that door and say, I want to make this video game anime Kong movie? What you know? I mean, it's amazing and congratulations. But what gets you in that door?
What got you in the door to be able to make this movie?
I'm stubborn, I'm stupid, and I moved out to LA and said I'm going to go broke because I'm going to be a filmmaker. And I did go broke, and I pawned important things from my life, and I was out making things every day. People want to talk about how people got someplace, what they did, or what opened the door for them, or whatever, and there's no path and there's no answer. The only thing that I know is you just have to make shit over and over and over and over again, and you have to make bad shit. And your friends have to be honest with you and say that's bad. And you have to be honest with yourself and say that's bad, because if you keep making shit, eventually, it's going to be better. And then you're going to be more proud of like the voice that you have, and you're going to be more in tune with your voice, and then hopefully people pay attention. And slowly people started to like, actually, I wasn't one of those guys who like made something, like now it's easy to perceive it, where it's like, oh, he made this indie, and then he got this big movie. But that erases like 10 years prior to that, where like, I would watch people like make a short and suddenly like get representation, or get offered a TV show, or do whatever, and I was never one of those guys, so I was just always out there grinding and making stuff, and just sort of sending that message, where for me, after Kings of Summer, I was also just very vocal about, I'd been out in the industry long enough, so I knew a lot of people and had started to make those connections, and they knew sort of what I was about and who I was, and even though like I was a young filmmaker, like there's a bunch of stuff that I self-generated, so they're like, oh, Jordan can handle his projects, like he knows how to get this shit done. But then another part of it was, I grew up on big movies. So before I discovered art house cinema or foreign cinema or film history or anything like that, I fell in love with movies because all I had access to was studio film. So I was very loud coming out of Kings of Summer saying, I want to do a big movie, because I believe that that's what most people have access to. And so, and people don't want to go to the theater anymore, and that's so sad to me. And so I wanted to make a big movie that like hopefully kids see it, inspires them to be a filmmaker, but also like reminds people like, oh right, like I'm most proudly like people go to this movie and I think they walk out and like that was fun. I felt like a little kid again. Like going to the theater is fun. Like people would rather be at home on Snapchat or Netflix instead of like going out to the theater, and the theater is my church. So I was just very vocal about that too. So it's honestly it's just like being stubborn, and it's constantly grinding and constantly making shit. And never comparing yourself to somebody else, because your path is your path and it's no one else's path. You can't be like, how'd that guy get that thing? What's that guy have? How come I don't have this? It's like your thing is your thing, and like we live in a show me culture. Do not tell anybody your idea anymore. Just go fucking make it. And if you sit around being like, oh, I got this cool thing, like, why don't we go do this? Doesn't matter. That's not the world we live in. Like if I had access to what kids have access to these days, in terms of phones, in terms of cameras, like I'd be out there making shit. You know what I mean? Like, does that answer your question?
No, it really does. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 20 years, and what you're saying is exactly what I've been trying to tell my students for years.
Yeah, but kids don't listen. Kids are dumb.
You have to cut the Facebook audio for that. Just don't put me on camera. But, no, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we live in a society where parents are always telling their kids everything they do is really great and really wonderful. And what you're saying about your friends telling you and being honest with you, that's the role that we play now. In that tough, sort of. How do you tell someone that they need to improve on something without hurting?
I'm gonna be such a dick to my kid. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna tell him everything's terrible. And then he's like gonna grow up and cure cancer or some shit. I fucking hate my dad.
I brought my dad tonight. He was, they grew up on these together, and he's the type that would tell me, no, this is what you need to fix here, or this is what you need to do there. Like he was honest, and
that's super important. Let's give him for his dad right now.
But yeah, the point is that what you're saying is exactly what I think the youth need to hear. That
kids are coddled these days. Kids are like helicopters. That's like a term in helicopter parenting. Like everybody's great. Everybody wins. It's not the world.
Participation trophies.
Yeah, it's not the world.
I'm actually curious, what got you into wanting to act? Was there like a role? Was there a performance? Was there some influence when you were a little kid?
To be honest, it was just a way for me to really let go. I didn't start acting until I was 23 years old. I just had a lot going on in my life. You know, I had my troubles. I had a lot of reasons to just make new friends and just try to start a new life, you know? So I was like, you know, maybe I should do that. And I heard the ad on the radio one day. I went down, and I was terrible at first, but I loved it. You know what I mean? Like, I was one of those people who would, like, you know how you get somebody who's, like, trying to coach you, and they're like, you know, Jason, you can call me anytime, whatever, you know, we can go over the scene, we can do whatever you want, and I'd be picking up the phone 11:30, 12 o'clock, like, look, I know it's a little late, you know, not really sure your relationship situation, but I'm trying to, you know, talk about this scene. And it made me stick out, you know, so like within, I say 4 weeks of me doing this workshop, they had an agent come check me out, and, you know, one thing just led to another. And I started booking, and then after I seen the check, I was like, you know, maybe I think this should be my job. And yeah, you know, it's just always been a way to really let go. And like before that, I was always a person that was like very confused on what I had to show the world, because I felt like I knew a little bit about a lot, you know, and I felt like I didn't fit anywhere particularly, you know. But when I got in touch with acting, it started making my life make sense, you know, and it feels like it makes me make sense. So here I am. You know?
But also, like the thing about Jay, and like this is, you know, him and I have been through hell together, but like he's just also one of those people who like this was going to find him somehow. Like the way that this like oozes out of him and exudes from him, he can't stop it. I'm lazy and like tired all the time, and like this guy shows up, like, you know when you watch like old like documentaries and someone talks about like Hendrix or Tupac or someone like that, and they're like, yo, you like, or just somebody, and they're like, you walk in a room and the energy changes. Like that's Jay. Like that's just naturally like who he is. Like he just has that in him, and so like he was always going to find it somehow, whether it was acting or whether it was whatever. You know, he was always going to find that light just because it was in him. And he went after it. Whereas the difference is like someone who just sits around and be like, oh, it'd be really good to do that. Like he took it upon himself to say, all right, I'm going to change my life up. I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to go and do this and be vulnerable. And, you know, people start wanting to be vulnerable.
And I might screw up the network right now, but didn't you book a Showtime show?
I did book a Showtime show. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. In the film Mudbound you were talking about, we actually ended up selling that to Netflix for 12.5 from Sundance.
Oh yeah, by the way, if you haven't, this is going to be like the big movie that comes out later this year. It was people raving about it at Sundance. It was one of the like top 3 or 5 at the festival that everyone raved about.
Thank you. Yeah, but things have been good, you know, and I'm thankful right now that I'm getting a chance to like really unpeel my onion, you know, and really like show the world what I got, because I'm still very, very much self-driven. You know, I don't need anybody to wake me up or tell me that I got things
I have to wake you
do,
up.
like,
I frequently have to wake him up.
Well,
Jay, you're missing your flight.
long nights, early ones. No, but yeah, I got a fire under my own ass, man. You know, and I'm not really afraid to go after what I want. You know, and I feel like through my journey, I've become, you know, somewhat of a people's champ. And like when people see me, they see a piece of themselves, you know, and they don't see me as better than them or nothing, because people really saw my whole transition and really could say, oh, he started from the bottom, now he's here, you know, and they can see that happening to their whole life, you know. So I'm glad that it's folding out the way that it's folding out, you know, because I just want to be hope.
A few more questions and we're going to call it. Very back up there.
Jordan, seeing as how you've made your indie film and you've now had the big cinema, and being a fan of anime, and there's this space now that could possibly be filled since how Miyazaki has officially made his last movie with this recent success of films like Your Name, the new animated movie that just came out. Would you be interested in making an animated film? And if so, would it be your own property or would you want to adapt something?
Would you you be interested in making an animated film? Would it be your own property, or would you be wanting to adapt something?
I'm interested in just storytelling, so I'm open to whatever. Your Name is incredible, and Miyazaki actually just came out of retirement, so I think he's got that under control right now. But like when I was in Japan, I sat down and got to know like Shinji Higuchi, who is like a big part of Evangelion and a bunch of other famous anime stuff, and those guys, they're geniuses, and I just don't think I can compete on that level. You know, I can sit here and be very inspired by that stuff, but like that works regularly so groundbreaking. So like I'm open to everything. I would love to sort of collaborate with people like that and explore what that process is in the same way. Like for me, doing a big effects thing was essentially being like, I'm going to learn animation. You know what I mean? I'm going to learn this process. So I always want to like grow and change as a filmmaker, but as of right now, I have no plans to do something like that. And I would hope it was something weird and original, but you know, who knows?
Oh, right there.
It's for both Jason and Jordan. I just wanted to know, what was it like waking up every day, working on this film, and then also what did it take to persevere and pull together with your colleagues to succeed in making this big movie?
What was it like making this film, working together? Wait, see some laughter. Wait, what did that?
Making movies is hard. And making a movie where you're traveling to 3 different continents and you have a giant ensemble cast and you're trying to really push yourself so that people don't sit in a theater and then it finishes and be like, I've seen that before. It's hard. So we were pushing ourselves really, really hard every day. And there were days that, like, you know, the reason that we got through it was each other and was the sort of like the family of like-minded. Like, to me, I'm going to tell you a really quick anecdote. On Kings of Summer, the first day of shooting, we had to go before photography, and it was like July 4th, so they're setting off fireworks. There's one shot of fireworks in the film. So me and my DP, my writer, my producers, we all went to this field, and they were setting off fireworks. We were going to get shots of the fireworks. Crazy, like, act of God storm comes in, right? From behind, out of nowhere. It went from, like, blue sky to, like, fire and brimstone. So literally, everybody in the field, the families just start, like, scrambling and dashing out of there. And the people letting off the fireworks immediately just start letting off all the fireworks, because they're like, we gotta get rid of this shit. So at that moment, it's raining, we don't have production. Me, my DP, my writer, and one of the actors all huddle around the camera to try and keep it dry as we're still trying to get this shot as the storm's coming in. And at that moment, I just realized that's what filmmaking is. We're like staring at something beautiful, trying to capture it, as every possible force on the planet tries to stop you, and everyone else is running away from you. And it's a select group of people huddled around this one thing because they love it. And that's what making this was, where we bound together because we love this and we trusted each other. And there were days when you're in a swamp for 5 days in a row, but I was in the swamp with them. You know what I mean? I wasn't just standing off to the side. And so, you know, that it was such a like incredible and beautiful process, and it was a hard process. But it was hard because we. And my cigarettes are down there. Jeez.
No cracks, thank God.
And so, you know, that was my experience, and we got through it with each other, and like I was saying before, I think that actually shows on screen.
I'm gonna start by saying GDPD all day. Trap House Vogue, the Trifecta.
These are all
The
inside
Splash
jokes
Brothers.
you guys won't know about.
No, we had so many great memories, man. So many things that we had to endure, you know. And Jordan was already a filmmaker before we met, you know. And he was already a fearless leader and all these things. But a lot of us hadn't done anything that size. But we knew we had to make it our movie. We knew we had to put our flag in the ground everywhere we went. We knew we were doing something nobody's ever done. We knew we were pioneering the world.
Now we're getting a little full of stuff.
No. I'm serious. Because you know we were the biggest
We were
film ever.
inventing airplanes. Started the assembly line.
We did fly helicopters. But you know, we did so many things that made us feel like this is our movie, even if it is a $200 million movie that Warner Brothers, you know, backed. And even though Kong is the most mystic creature, you know, and so many other things that could be in the way of it being our movie, there's not one day where we live like that, you know, and we became a family, we became something different, you know, and after spending 6 months of your life with, you know, the same group of people who you're overcoming so much with, it turns into something else, you know what I mean? So, like, it's hard to watch this movie and not be blown away, you know, and it'll never get old, you know what I mean? And we definitely made some lifelong friendships, and you'll see a lot more of us. We need to tear this shit up. I'm telling you.
Why don't we call it there? And I'm just going to say that, and I really mean this, a huge thank you to IMAX for letting us show this before release. A huge thank you to Warner Brothers. And seriously, Jason, Jordan, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for driving all the way out here to see it. And this is going to sound weird because when I was making it indie, I was getting in front of people being like, you got to tell everyone, you got to tell your friends, because it's a small little indie and it lives and dies by word of mouth. And I feel so weird now being up here again with this super expensive movie that has billboards all over town. But truly, I need you guys to go out and like tell people that this is way different than they expect. I need you guys to like be loud about that. I need you guys to like, if you like this movie, if you want to see more movies that are weird and not giving you the same thing over and over again, like go out and like tell people, like we have to like, you know, we have to open and we have to like get out there and like to some degree our job is done. And I feel proud of what these guys did and the fact that this is like a big movie that has a voice. But like truly take people to the movie this weekend or go and just tell people to see it. Like you guys being loud actually makes a difference. So please, you know, I can't thank you guys enough for coming tonight. I'm psyched that you guys stayed here listening to us ramble. And, you know, thank you to Warner Brothers and to you and to Legendary and to IMAX, who are the kings of cinema. But